What causes and regulates movement in plants? The answer is Nyctinasty. Nastic movement is the diurnal response or response to environmental stimuli such as light, temperature, or touch. These movements can occur in the leaf, stem, or flower petals and are regulated by the plant's circadian rhythm. Genes play a major role in response that stimulate a series of protein relays that determine whether a gene is turned on or off by an environmental cue. Nastic movement can occur due to the circadian rhythm with the solar cycle or in relation with a pollinator. One of the most well-known flowers associated with plant movement is the sunflower, a type of movement termed heliotropism or sun tracking. There is a direct correlation between the sunflower movement from east to west during the daytime in alignment with the sun. When a closer look is taken, this type of movement occurs on a cellular level. So what causes plants to respond to its environment? Genetics are responsible for regulating the circadian clock, and the circadian clock controls the opening and closing of flower petals or leaves. Through a series of feedback loops, specific genes play the role of whether these genes turn on or off. Each plant has its own unique proteins that influence plant movement. Many of these proteins are still being researched. Arabidopsis thaliana is a good example of circadian feedback loops playing a major role in the opening and closing of its floral counterparts. Comparing wild type and mutant type, the wild type strongly demonstrates the correlation between the opening and closing of petals during light and dark transitions monitored under constant temperature. The wild type with the regulator gene causes feedback loops to undergo movement, while the mutant type without the gene does not respond at all. Another family where nastic movement occurs is in the liverworts. Thallus movements in the liverworts express genes that drive temporal expression patterns or genes that are expressed during a specific time. The motor cells that drive thallus movement have been identified as an ancestral trait, and the original purpose of the regulator gene is still unknown. Hormones also relay movements in plants. The hormone auxin associated with growth plays a role for movement in the thallus lobes, also responsible for the elongation of cells. On a cellular level, leaf motor cells are controlled by genus-specific receptors. Researchers can discover genus-specific receptors that drive leaf or thallus motor cells by labeling probes that bind to the specific gene of interest. In this case, the gene that drives motor cells leads to more questions of which proteins are responsible turning the receptor genes on. Studies in leguminous plants have shown that the leaf regulator cells, termed pulvini, are located at the base of the leaflet and is driven by turgor pressure change, which causes cellular expansion in the stem. Specific genes are responsible for the regulation of circadian rhythms caused by the presence or absence of the sun. The light and dark reactions caused by the sun cause gene expressions to be turned on, which cause swelling by extensors that maintain volume and pressure in the stem, which then cause the plant to move around dawn. Other plants may use hydration motors, which again occur due to the turgor pressure of water within cells and requires a semi-permeable membrane with a strong cellulose wall to prevent hypotonic pressures from rupturing the cells. Here we have the mimosa plant, also known as the sensitive plant, which contains the leaf regulator cells pulvini. And here we can see the turgor pressure causes the leaf cell to contract once the stimuli has been stimulated, drawing water out of the cells, causing the leaf to appear in this unstimulated folded state. Not all plants have been noted to contain either Pulvini cells nor hydration motors. What other reasons cause plants to move? As the sun drives photosynthetic reactions, relay responses cause some plants to either open or close during the day or at night. Plants that evolved to track the sun have been studied and documented to show an increase of approximately 9.5% of photosynthetic production under the conditions of clear skies. By controlling leaf orientation, the plant can increase its ability for the incident of light to strike the chlorophyll molecule at an angle which can maximize photosynthetic reactions. Protecting a plant's pollen grain is influenced by genetics. Exposing pollinators to different orientations of the nicotine plant do not affect whether the pollinator is more or less attracted to a particular flower. Yet there is a strong correlation between the nicotine plant and the pollinator because the flowers will still oscillate during pollination hours. Selective pressures in the environment that cause movement in plants come with a high energy cost. That cost is important to the plant. And in this case, it is not to maximize the attraction of the pollinator. By orientating the position of the flowers vertically during the daytime, reduces the overall viability of the pollen grains. If the flower is directly horizontal to the pollen grains, would remain contained, therefore increasing pollination by the pollinator. Foliar nycticity is the ability to oscillate leaves in different direction that may serve as a competitive advantage against herbivory. Excess water buildup on the leaves and as a regulator for temperature. During the daytime, plants with foliar nycticity orientate their leaves horizontally, which maximizes photosynthesis in the leaf. Vertically pointed leaves occur during nighttime hours, which may serve as protection against nocturnal predators. The competitive advantage of plants with foliar nycticity is that it may discourage herbivores and persuade the predator to cover more ground, therefore less likely to bother that plant. Nastic plants may serve an advantage by increasing the overall fitness of the plant over non-nyctinastic plants. An example of nyctinastic plants in Manitoba include the dandelion and the volunteer flax, which close their flower petals once the sunlight of incidence begins to strike below the horizon. Manitoba's national flower, the prairie crocus, closes its petals at nighttime, perhaps to protect themselves from the cooler temperatures that early spring brings Manitoba. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed and learned a little bit on why plants like to move.